Hello and welcome to Find Your Freedom, a podcast dedicated to helping you truly find freedom in all aspects of life. Join your hosts and their expert guests as they share practical tips and strategies for finding more freedom in your life. It's time to take control of your life and create the future you want. Let's find your freedom. Here are your hosts, Lenny the Boss and Omid Rad Investor.
Boom, boom, boom. We are back with another fantastic episode of Find Your Freedom. And before we get into today's episode, we just want to let you know if you are interested in a mortgage for your personal home, for a midterm rental, for a short-term rental, or a long-term rental, then Wealth Builders Mortgage Group is for you. You just want to go there, go to their site, book a call with them, get on their schedule. They'll talk to you. They'll find out all the information that they need, and they will ultimately help you. Omid and I both use them for all of our property. So they are 100% legit. Once again, Wealth Builders Mortgage Group. Go check them out. So now today, right, we have an incredible guest to join us here on Find Your Freedom today. You know, her name is Jamie Banks, and she's a visionary, right? She's a CEO, and she went from managing a massive portfolio of over 14,000 commercial units, right? You know, to build her own empire, all right, which is always cool. That's what we look for, to find your freedom. And Jamie, she's on a mission to empower women, to empower minority investors, you know, and breaking all those barriers in the real estate world. Her journey from corporate success to entrepreneurship freedom is truly, truly, truly inspiring. And today she's going to give us all the love and share everything with us in this real estate world. So with that being said, Jamie, how you doing? How you feeling today?
Doing great. Excited to be here.
Fantastic, fantastic. So Jamie, you know what? You know, we always like to get a little background on our guests. So tell us where are you from?
So I'm actually from Baltimore, Maryland. Grew up in Baltimore, and then now I'm currently in Virginia. So I've been fairly much East Coast, DMV area most of my life.
Awesome. So yeah, maybe you can like kind of just give us a little breakdown, like young Jamie and kind of like how you got into the space and kind of like how you transitioned.
Sure. So I remember growing up, I liked the HGTV shows, like, the flip shows, and I forget the two brothers, I forget their names, but you probably know the ones I'm talking about, where I would see all these shows on HGTV and, I always thought that would be cool. And then, went on to the next channel. And so I think it really wasn't until after college that I saw real estate as being an attainable goal. So, kind of as Lenny already mentioned, I actually manage commercial properties. And so, right out of school, I actually started working for a large commercial lender where the first deal I underwrote was 1,000 unit portfolio. And it was agency debt, which is Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or FHA.
Yep.
This was a Fannie Mae debt. And so, looking back, it's funny of like what the type of project I was underwriting and working right alongside with Fannie and Freddie on underwriting different deals. And so that really kind of laid the foundation of real estate. I was underwriting, high value real estate. And so I think a
Mm.
few years later, it really started to click to me like, hey, those single family homes or small multifamilies that I always kind of dreamed of being able to, own myself. I definitely can. I have the skill set.
Interesting, interesting. So, like, I guess what's your background? Did your family invest? Did you knew people in your neighborhood that invest? Like tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so actually, my grandfather, I like to say, is an OG real estate investor. He
Uh-oh.
still
OG.
self manages at 92. So, really
Wow.
OG.
Hold on. Did you just say self-managed at 92 years old?
Yes.
Oh, me, that's a first.
That is the
Should
first.
he? Maybe not. I can't say too much because he actually listens to podcasts too. So, I gotta be careful. But yes, very much of a self manager. And then now he has I think it's maybe like 8 or 9 units at his, kind of prime. I think it was over 30 units. They were all in Dover, Delaware. And so I remember seeing that and then, seeing kind of like the lifestyle that my grandparents were able to have because of real estate. And I remember growing up, they would always say, all of these things happen and we didn't have all of this, but with real estate, they were able to sell off like a large part of their land. It was a few acres. They got, millions from it, which definitely was a life changer versus, not as much you can't get as much just from rental properties, but just being able, just the wealth building aspect of real estate really changed their life. And then so for me, um, knowing that, and then as I was going, just seeing kind of the lifestyle of real estate investors, it looked fun. It looked like each kind of building or single family asset, whatever you're buying, is its own kind of project. And I always like that aspect of it and how there's active and passive ways to invest. And so I've always kind of been interesting in investing, but I think it kind of took me working at like a lender, and then I worked at another operator, and when I was an asset manager in commercial real estate, and then you know listening to Bigger Pockets and reading all the books to really say, hey, and this is the strategy that I want to do, because as you both know, there's so many different ways to invest in real estate.
Awesome.
So I think that's really cool. You were exposed to it at a younger age. You kind of see like a model, and you want to kind of like follow that model because it demonstrates wealth building and success. I see you dip your toes into like the lending and asset management. How do you decide, like, you go into like Bigger Pockets? How do you decide like what niche that you want to do, or like how, like, because there's so many things in real estate. So like for somebody who just wants to get started, or maybe is in a similar position where maybe they see somebody who's kind of, they show success, like where do you get started, and where do you go from there?
No, for me, it was like what, at the time I was making, pretty good money and, still young, had a lot of ways to kind of climb the corporate ladder. But once I realized that corporate wasn't for me and I didn't like the lifestyle of having to clock in, having to be someplace when someone else told me that I had to be
Yep.
there, I still don't do well with that. And so I knew I wanted a lifestyle on my own terms, and to have that freedom and also have that flexibility. And so, one, I knew like right off the bat, I can't be a flipper unless I'm going to be flipping 100 properties, or, exaggeration, but at
So
volume.
Jamie, can I just chime in real quick? So kind of give like a age around you were like, so like how old were you? Kind of, so we can go. You don't gotta get an age, maybe the year of around when this was, if you want to go
Sure.
there.
So, like this, I would say like, so November of 2022, I
Okay.
don't care about age, I was 26, um, is when I really started, like, had the pivotal moment of like, I'm doing this for someone else, I'm getting paid, but I wanted to do it myself. And then I read actually 30 Days Stay, which is like a Bigger Pockets published book on midterm rentals. And I remember reading it and being like, this seems easy. Like, not that, again, it's not definitely not easy, but I just remember hearing it broken out and saying, this doesn't seem too difficult. And
Yep.
so when I really was like, I remember I read it once for, content, and then I read it again and followed it because I was like, I was always a great student. So I was always good at following, step one, two, three. And so I followed it. And so this was November of 2023. And then I closed beginning of January of, I mean, sorry, it was November of 2022. I
Yep.
closed beginning of January 2023 on my first investment property. So once it for me, like I had the roadmap of like, oh, I liked midterm rentals. And I think for me, like again, kind of I was saying like designing my life, I liked that they had the cash flow potential or even more sometimes of short term rentals. But also I knew I didn't want to do something too active like flipping or short term rentals where my time, was really going to be more constrained, and I was going to have to be, busy. If I wanted to flip, I was going to be busy flipping. Where I liked midterm rentals because, and now I know it's a lot of work. Like I'm setting one up right now,
Yep.
and then also just in finding that tenant. But I have one actually in Philly where my tenant's been there over a year,
Philly, Philly,
and
Philly.
so, I found him and he's there and he's, chilling. Knock on wood, he hasn't haven't heard from him in a few months. I get the rent, we're all good. And so that's one thing I liked about midterm rentals, where it's like the work and like the amount of like hospitality aspect was more in the beginning where like, a short term rental, you're constantly on. And also I wanted the cash flow where, me getting into investing in
There you go.
2023. long-term rentals aren't going to cash flow, where my midterm rentals on average cash flow about 1,500 a month. I knew I
That's good.
wasn't going to find that with a long-term rental, especially with one, unit.
Yeah. So Jamie, there's going to be a lot of people, you know, especially women that's sitting or we're sitting, in the same shoes as you, right? Who, smart, obviously, follow the corporate world, and then sitting there realizing, hold up, this cannot be me for the next 30 to 40 years, right? And that's what you did. So I guess, like, take us through that mindset. Take us through what what did you have to overcome to sit here and actually make that jump, make that move? And did you immediately make the move? Like, you know what? I'm cutting bait. I'm starting tomorrow. Or did you gradually, move it in, and then you got to a certain point and said, "Hey, I'm going full-time entrepreneur." So, can you just walk us through that time?
Sure. So, like when I first closed on my first investment property, a few days after, I got an arbitrage property, which, for those who don't know, is basically when you rent a property from a landlord and then you sublet it out. And so, basically, I had two midterm rentals in like a week. Then I came home from Philly, and turned my primary residence into a midterm rental. And so, I went from zero to three midterm rentals in basically a month. And so, I say
Now,
this to
Jamie, were
say,
you still working at this time?
yes, I was still
Okay.
working.
Okay.
And basically 3 months later, I quit my job. Don't always recommend that, but for me, I realized that one, it was going to take a lot of work to build what I wanted to build. And it was I was at a place in my career where my next step was management. And so I was like, do I want to continue on this path? And basically, I would have had to choose one, because I'm definitely someone, like, one of my models is like, where focus goes, energy flows. And I knew I couldn't put the amount of energy I wanted to into both kind of, aspects. I guess you would say. And so for me, I was like, you know what? Like, I'm married, and me and my husband talked about it, and we were at the point where we could just live off one income. And so I was like, okay, if I quit and I make no money in the first year, which, to be honest, I really didn't, we were okay and we could still live. And then, we started house hacking and doing other things. And so that really helped take the leap, because I remember, like, sitting down, I'm like, okay, I want to do this. What's the worst that can happen? And I was like, okay, maybe a house burns down, or, you start thinking about the worst that can happen, and you're like, there's insurance, there's all these things that you can put in place, and, or get more insurance if you're, really risk averse, to kind of prepare for the worst case scenario, because things are going to happen. But when I was like, okay, what's the best that can happen? I remember stopping, and I'm like, I don't know. There's all these case scenarios, and for me, where my business is today is definitely not where I envisioned it would be, in a great way, when I first quit last year. And so I think that for me was like, you know what, let me take a risk on myself. At the time when I quit, I was 26, married, but with no kids. And so, like, from a, perspective of, like, being able to take a risk, it was the best time to take a risk. It was me, my husband, and my senior dog. And so, again, we could live off one income. House
Yeah.
hacking, we
Yeah.
actually rented a room, actually the room I'm in right now. We rented this room out for 1,500, and our mortgage was 1,537. And so, like,
Wow.
the power of
Wow.
house hacking was nice too, where literally it's like, well, we don't have much to lose if
Well,
we
let's
try
stay
house
right there to make sure that the listeners understand what you did there, right? You
hacking.
know, obviously you and your husband, came to an agreement, which is awesome, right? So the communication was there. The second thing was, hey, how can we reduce our expenses while we're building something special? So you're not worrying about now, you're worrying about the future, right? So you went to house hacking, and with house hacking you were able to bring in rent that covered your entire mortgage, correct? So it was like you went from paying a mortgage to living free, right? While
No,
you're building a business and your husband's still working.
yep, exactly. And also, like, we had two cars. I had a Tesla, sold that because we had one paid off car. And now like, my husband works remotely, I work remotely. We don't have many places to be. And I'm also someone who travels, usually more weeks than I'm home. And so we looked at Turo, we looked at different things, and when you really start thinking about, again, you were saying, Lenny, like now versus later, I'm like, I want later, I want to be so comfortable that I can, volunteer more and I can take a month off to do whatever I want to do and things like that. And so we have a 3 bedroom. We're actually, I'm in it right now, but we're turning it into a whole home,
Oh,
MTR.
wow.
But before,
Wow.
we have a 3 bedroom. It's actually set up kind of perfectly where the master is on a different side of the home. It's actually a condo in Reston, Virginia, which is in Fairfax County, close to DC. And so we've had medical professionals who've worked at the nearby hospital, and those are my favorite tenants because they're never home. Um, I think one was here 3 months, and I maybe saw her 5 times because
Wow.
she worked 12-hour shifts. When she wasn't at work, she was on call, and then she was also a grandmom, and her grandkids lived 30 minutes away. So when she
Okay.
wasn't working or on call, she was there. And so I'm like, we can rent out this room and basically live for free. And yeah, it's like we're married, so it's a little uncomfortable maybe having someone in the house. But I'm like, we have 3 bedrooms. My husband has a man cave. I have, my thing is I wanted my master closet, and I have a little reading nook, and we have a room that was a
Yeah.
guest room that maybe 1 or 2 people stayed a year. And so it was like, are we okay being, a little uncomfortable to have comfort later? Isn't to not, it's like, how else can you make $1,500 per month easily without too much work?
That's
And
crazy.
really,
Awesome.
I think I spent maybe $500 because the room was already a guest room, just getting extra linens. I have like an accent wall and things like that, and then paying for the photographer. But it really was low risk. And then also with midterm tenants, they're usually typically shorter term compared to long term. So our first tenant and our average tenant's here for 3 months, and so
Okay.
it's like, hey, it's 3 months. If we hate it, we just will never do it again. And
Right.
we ended up, been doing it for a little over a year and a half.
That's really
Wow.
awesome. I like your quote. You said what where your energy, where your focus goes, your energy goes. Um,
Energy flows.
so I guess what I want to ask with that is you also talk about designing your life. So it looks like you're going all in this real estate venture and so what's like the next stages? Like I know you talked big about like designing your life and kind of envisioning like what you're looking for. So for somebody who's looking to do that, or maybe in a similar position, like it sounds like there's different stages of like planning, and sometimes things are going as planned and sometimes they're not. And when do you reassess and assess like what is the priority and then kind of like what you are looking to do next?
Yeah, so I think for me, it's like always, it's delegating before I think I'm ready has been, kind of how I want to design my life. Because I realize when I grow and when I scale, that usually means like me being stretched too thin. And I've definitely been in that position. And it's, I didn't quit my, say stable job to go into being a high stressful position that, it's sometimes people know as business owners doesn't always net consistent income. And so for me, like it's my VA who pretty much runs, let's say 80% of my business and is doing the day-to-day work to keep it afloat. And so for me, designing like my ideal life is as I'm growing, make sure whether it's a VA or it's another team member that I have someone to delegate and also can support, the expense to bring them on so that as I'm growing, my business is making more money. It's not taking too much time from the things that I want to do and the travel and the experiences I want to have.
Awesome. Hey, listen, you said something that was huge, delegating. And I want to talk about that a little bit because, you know, a lot of times when people become an entrepreneur, right? The first thing that happens is they take everything on their plate. They're doing all the emails, they're doing all the looking up properties, they analyzing the deals, they talking to all the potential, guests or tenants, right? Did you come in saying, "Hey, I'm going to delegate," or was that something that you learned to do?
I would say it's more so something I learned to do. And the reason why is because like when I talked like, a little bit earlier about managing 14,000 units, like it
Yeah,
sounds crazy saying, but it wasn't hard. Like it wasn't something that was difficult. Like yeah, there was challenges with any position and
of
there
course.
was a learning there was a learning gap, but it wasn't difficult in the sense of, oh my God, I'm scrambling because it's 14,000 because it was all systemized. And so that's what I realized for me is when I started, my whole business wasn't systemized. And so I knew kind of early on that I needed like certain things tracked. So like with midterm rentals, there isn't like a source of truth or a source of data like there is for short-term rentals. Like short-term rentals, you might have AirDNA and
Yep.
you
Yep.
know, and price labs and different sources. Well, that doesn't exist for midterm rentals. So I knew early on that I needed to keep track of my own data because if I'm going to keep buying in different markets, I want
Hmm.
to be able to one kind of support as I'm raising money. Like these are my returns. This is my expected rent because there isn't really anywhere to get it. And I remember saying, I know I can't spend 10 hours a week data entry. And so, I was talking to some investor friends. That's why it's always important to surround yourself with other investors. And so
There
they're
you
like, hey,
go.
try
There
a
you
VA.
go.
And people were, paying $3 to $6 an hour for virtual assistants. And I'm like, oh, I can afford that. And so, like my first VA, I paid $4 an hour. That VA is still with me. I've had hired more, let some
So
go.
Jamie, that first VA. Now, did you bring them on full time? Did you bring them on 20 hours? Did you bring them on?
Great
You know,
question. No, just 10 hours a week. So I remember saying, okay, I can do 40 hours a week. I won't get, a few Starbucks and there I go. And so, 'cause I think a lot of people, especially I have consulting clients who are like, I'm not ready to up delegate. I can't afford it. And I'm like, $4 an hour at 10 hours a week. Yes, you can.
mhm.
Especially if it's just like you have a CRM that maybe doesn't connect or integrate with things. And someone, I think one of the first things I had her do was scrub my email and put people's names in my CRM
Yeah,
by
yeah.
title. I don't have time for that. Like I don't I could, I very well could do it while watching TV, but that's not the best use of my
Of your
time.
time. Hmm.
And then basically a belt now she works about 50 hours um for me a week and has developed. She answers my calls, she does my
Excellent.
tenant screening, she's
Excellent.
placing tenants, and she's essentially my property manager. I just kind of
Wow.
sign the checks, make the payments, and then anything over $300 she asks for my approval on. But
Okay.
it's been virtual assistants, I'm not exactly not as easy as it sounds, and it takes constant training. But for
Hmm.
me, it's like as a small business owner who wants to keep my expenses relatively low, me spending time, like it's not worth my time doing certain things, but it could be worth my time developing SOPs and training to then
Yeah.
pour into her and train and develop her so that she's able to take more off of my plate.
Awesome. So, and Jamie, I love everything that you're saying here because you're letting everyone know that there is going to be a time when you're going to hire. And I hate to say everybody, always see one thing. They see, oh, well, if I hire somebody, they got to be full time and I have to have them 8 hours a day and I have to have enough work for them. And it's like, no, listen to what Jamie said. Jamie said she started with, what was that, 4 hours a day? You said?
10 hours a week.
I mean, 10 hours a week. And then what the great thing I heard is that she grew with you, right? She started, here with entering your emails into your your management system, right? Into now she's managing tenants, she's approving things up to a certain value figure, and that's what we need to know is that you can always start small, and when you start small, you grow because you're able to work on the business, right? So last question on this topic, but what did that VA allow you to do and how did that VA change your business life, if not your regular
Yes, no, definitely. She runs my regular life too, honestly. But
life?
I would say for me, it's like it helped me define departments, which sounds really nerdy. It kind of is, but I realized like my stroke of genius is in acquisitions, whether that's new property acquisitions or new customer acquisitions, because I also offer services to real estate investors. Where my VA's name's Anna. her actually, like, one of her roles is like marketing. So I'm not good with marketing. And so we sat down and we developed a plan, but she really enacts that plan through social media, through our email, through our CRM and our email campaigns. And so for me, defining departments helped me just like hone in on my stroke of genius and then realize where maybe I need to either train her, or sometimes me training her, like with marketing, I can't train you because I'm not good at it. It's, purchasing training or finding training to then train her, or even
Wow.
paying someone to train her for an hour for her to ask questions. Because I'm like, I can't train her on marketing if I don't know marketing. People in the blind leading the blind, or not leading each other in the best direction. And
Right.
so I think for me, it was really to like hone in on what I was good at, and then either delegate to her or outsource if needed. Like bookkeeping is something that I kind of enjoy it, but it's not something that she's strong at. And so I'm going to outsource that starting next year. So I think it just really just helped me define, which areas of my business, I'm not good at, but and that it really freed up my time to put me into the positions where I'm the strongest at, and like that makes me money, because that's the point of business is to generate a profit. And so really being able to free up my time to focus on money making activities was also a huge benefit.
I mean, I love the ability to save time, and I think that the big question is with entrepreneurs always seems to be like, how much time and where should I be saving time relative to cost? And like, there's like some on one side of the spectrum who are like, they want more control, they want to do more things. They're like, hey, I can do this. This is a task I can do. And then you have somebody on the other side of the spectrum who all they care about is they don't want to do anything that they're not good at or that they specialize in. So what would you recommend to somebody who's thinking about it? They're kind of not really sure, but it sounds really interesting to do.
Yeah, so one thing I like to say is like with VAs, there's so many different types of VAs. I think when I say virtual assistant, most people kind of assume the overseas, like my virtual assistants from the Philippines. But there's also stateside virtual assistants. Like I have a friend who uses a virtual assistant who's a military wife and so isn't able to keep a steady job because her husband and her family are constantly relocating. And so she just does her guest communications. I think she works like 7 hours a week. But this is an example of someone who can be a virtual assistant who, and I say this because, $4 an hour virtual assistant, you get what you pay for. You're going to spend a lot more time training. And so I like that because I was still in control, because basically at first, probably for the first year, almost everything she did, I have to approve. Then I have to approve. So it's like, it saved me time doing it, but I just didn't have that trust yet to be able to say, okay, just do it. I know that
Yep.
you know what you're
Yep.
doing. But like
Yep.
as she placed a few tenants, and I'm like, oh, that's you found a tenant faster than me. As soon and things started happening, then I'm like, okay, it's I'm able to kind of move forward, and I'm able to delegate more in the business. But if you're someone who is like, I just want to not have XYZ be a responsibility of mine. Maybe you want a virtual assistant who's stateside, or someone who has experience in something. Like I have two friends who work together, who one is she's a full-time employee and she has her own Airbnbs. And so she's just helping my friend because she wants some extra hours or some extra work, but she has a whole short-term rental portfolio. So when my friend hired her, it was a very seamless transition because she already knew short-term rentals. And so maybe, if you're someone who's like, I don't have time to train, I don't have time to develop everything, I really just want to have someone who can kind of seamlessly, kind of integrate into my business.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're looking for someone who's already experienced and, whatever you're looking for. And usually that equals more dollars, per hour that you're paying.
Awesome. So let me ask you. You've done some great stuff. I mean, you got a grandfather that's 92 and still managing properties. So you was able to see that. You dived into the corporate world and managed over 14,000 units, and I applaud you for that. Then you took a leap of faith on and bet on yourself, and you're winning. So to date, what is your biggest accomplishment so far?
Hmm.
Yeah, Jamie. What's your biggest
Oh,
accomplishment
and
so
that's just
far?
very emotional. Probably, I would say marrying my husband, because I feel like it really, like, he's an entrepreneur as well. He's been an entrepreneur, I think, since he was 7. And
Okay.
so when he realized, like, I found this passion, then he was like, just quit your job. It's okay. We got this. Because it's
Mm.
funny, he was supposed to be the one to be a full-time entrepreneur. And I was like, I want to be a CEO. I want to be an employee. That didn't last long. I was only in corporate America for 5 years, but like making that decision and marrying the right partner definitely set me up for success. Like, we're both MBAs. And so sometimes like our dates are sitting down and talking about business strategy and things like that. And I'm like, but we have fun, over a margarita. So it's
Yeah,
still fun. But I
that's
think just having
awesome.
a partner who's supportive or who understands, like, I'm not going to make any money for the first year or 2 or 3, and being okay with that. Um, and then also, we got married in 2020, which, so we didn't get to have our large reception, which was amazing
Okay.
because that we got to house hack. And so I think all of that, together, and not having because it's COVID, a 300-person reception, and being able to buy an investment property, and our interest rate is
Boom,
2.49%.
boom, boom,
All
boom,
of
boom,
that
boom, boom.
definitely, helped us all just, to where we are today. And that's why our payment is $1,500 too, is because bought at the right time, got married at the right time. I think all of it synced to, lead us to where we are today.
So
Awesome.
kind of just piggybacking on that a little bit is like the importance of like the relationship to kind of seek out your goals or your dreams or setting out that vision. So just maybe just can you just touch on like um, the discussion, like how do you set up that discussion? Because I think a lot of couples, maybe that communication, sometimes there's some barriers. So how do you even set that up? I heard margarita, that's, I'm sold there. But just any other tips
Yeah.
that you would give to kind of just be on the same page, and or like even just as you're going through it and kind of updating like what you're looking to do.
Yeah, so I think one, like, goal setting together. Like, one thing we started to do is like the first of the year doing goal setting, as a family. So like we're doing our goal setting as a couple, then our individual businesses and our individual selves. And so that was like a good foundation for having those conversations. I think another thing too is like just understanding our why and like what makes us happy. And before I quit my corporate job, I was really depressed, honestly. And I was like,
Wow.
I liked my job. My first job, I mean, we don't even have enough time to go through what, the reason why I didn't like it, but unfortunately, I experienced a bit of racism while working there. And so it
Ah,
really corporate just never, like, after that, and it was at a huge company that's 40,000 people. I was in Chicago, which most people know is a very diverse city, but I was the only person of color in the office. And so I think being in that position for me, I was just over corporate, and I just, I got PTSD from it. I had to go to therapy just
wow.
from Slack and hearing the pings and things like that. And so when I think my husband realized, and everyone who was around me realized just how unhappy I was, and like, you're at work, more than you're at home. Now we work from home, maybe not, but essentially, usually before, work from home, you were at work or getting to work or from work more than you were home. And as someone who worked my past job, I was working usually like 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. And I was in grad school, and at the time, my husband were long distance and all these things. I just remember like knowing that like I wanted something different, and that I wanted, the freedom. And then he knew I wanted the freedom. And
Yep.
so when it came to a solution, which for me was midterm rentals, which to me was real estate investing and starting my own company, I feel like everything just kind of fell into place. And then also it was having contingency plans. Like, because I was
Mm.
we both were high earners. We paid a lot in taxes. And so, talking to a CPA and realizing me being full time in real estate, working as in real estate professional status, we can save a lot of money in taxes. And so we were also able to kind of talk about how we can save more money, how maybe we can utilize my retirement or his retirement, and just kind of went through all the scenarios. And so although it was, hey, I'm quitting my job and this, and I was actually the I made more than my husband did. And so really taking that significant amount of, money that we were, losing, obviously we had to kind of run through what that would look like. But when we
Yep.
ran through the scenarios and kind of had a contingency plan, like, hey, if I make no money, I have my MBA, I left both jobs I was at, I left on good terms. I can always go back. And so, that was the way I was able to take a leap of faith, but still have a plan. And then, we established that plan together.
I love that. And I'm so happy you were able to explain that, because that's, like Omid mentioned, is a big barrier for individuals, is to, get your spouse on board on your dreams. You know what I mean? Because your dreams are your dreams, right? And their dreams are their dreams. And I love the way that you went about it. And I love the support. And what I also love is, obviously, your spouse is not even in real estate, right? He was doing his own thing in entrepreneurship. So, and letting you do that's just so great. You're going to help so many people with just that little small snippet clip right there. But I have a question for you. What does find your freedom mean to you?
I think to me, it means like designing a life where you can have freedom, financial freedom. I think time freedom, travel freedom, and really, I think freedom, it's kind of defined differently. But for me, it's really being able to do what I want to do when I want to do it. Sometimes I love to work and I just want to work all day, all night. I had one of those basically all working weekends, but I had a great time. But I know after Thanksgiving, I'm going to be done with working. Like, I don't want to work in December at all. And so, finding your freedom means like finding a life that you want to live and then being able to design like your work schedule around it.
So we're gonna hit the holidays pretty soon. I know people want to connect with you, but how can they find you if where can we get connected with you?
Yeah, so the best place is Instagram. I'm at Jamie Banks, my first and last name, real estate. Yeah, that's the best place to connect with me, follow me, send me a DM. I'm pretty responsive on there.
Awesome. And you also got a course, right?
Yeah, so I also have a course centered on midterm rentals.
Okay.
You can go to my website. It's www.radiate.com/course.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So this is the time where all three of us are going to say boom loud as we can and hold it for a little bit. All right. On the count of three. Y'all ready? All right, cool. Got the head nods, everybody. On three. One, two, three. Boom! Awesome, 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 awesome. Check this out. We just had a fantastic episode with Jamie Banks, and check out her course on midterm rentals. Listen, Jamie got everything together. She has the experience, and she took her experience and she made it her own, and her passion. And talking to Jamie, I met her personally. I think we was in San Diego, I believe, when we met. So she's also a fantastic time, outside of just work and getting to know her. So please, please, please check out Jamie, follow her, and check out her course as well. And we need you to sit here and listen to our episodes and give us an honest 5-star review. That's the way that we can bring more Jamies on board, so she can provide the value that you're looking for, so you can find your freedom. Now, remember, we want you to share this episode with all your friends, your mother, your brother, your sister, your cousin, your aunt, your uncles, all your coworkers, the ones that you like and the ones that you don't like. Until the next episode of Find Your Freedom, we talk to you soon. Peace.
Thanks for listening to Find Your Freedom. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. While you're at it, please help us spread the word by leaving a rating and review and sharing the podcast with friends, family, and colleagues. Until next time, get out there and find your freedom.